Hey everyone, this video is to help you with creating your floors, your stem walls, and your footings for your crawl space in Revit. So we didn't get to talk about this in class on Wednesday. Hopefully this video will help you. This is an example residential project that I am using. You can see right here, this is my ground plane, and then I have items underneath my ground plane. So in my instance, I have a basement. You guys are going to create a crawl space. Before we get to that, let's talk about the floor system. If you go to your first floor and you select your floor, there's a couple ways to do this. One way is you can hover near a wall and keep clicking on the tab key until it selects the floor, which sometimes takes a while. Or you can come down here to select element by face, and then you can pick on the floor slab. So the floor slab that you can use is this wood joist 10-inch with a wood finish. If you don't have one with a wood finish, you can just create one. So you could click on it, hit edit type, duplicate it, and then just edit the finish material so that the material is wood floor, or if you wanted carpet or if you want tile, you can use those different elements right here in the finish layer. In between the core boundary, you have plywood sheathing, and then you have your wood joists. So essentially what you're creating is you're creating these joists within the floor system, and then the plywood sheathing is this right here where my mouse is. So it's these boards that are laid over the joist so that you don't fall through the floor, and then your wood finish material, your wood flooring or your carpet goes on top of this plywood surface. Now in actuality, what we would really have to do is we would have to figure out our span. Based on span charts, wood will only span a certain distance before it starts to buckle and fail. Mr. Cannon talked about this with you all in class, I think last Monday. But for the case of Revit, if you don't know your span, which in turn gives you the depth of your joist, we could just go ahead and we can say 10-inch for everybody. Alright, so that's how you're going to create your floor. You don't need to draw individual structural components. You just need to use the floor tool. So architecture, floor, and then just draw the floor like you normally would. Now make sure that your floor, however, does go to, I'll show you, the core boundary of the wall, and it does not go all the way to the exterior. So you'll know you drew the floor correctly if you put it in 3D view and you don't see the floor coming through the wall. If you see the floor coming through the wall, it means that you extended your floor slab right here. Let's look at the boundary. You extended it all the way to the front face of your building, which is incorrect. That's why the floor is coming through the wall. It should only be to the wood stud. So in this case, right here is the edge of my wood stud, and that's where my floor should be placed. To place your floor correctly, I'll just delete one of these lines. You can use the Pick Walls tool, and then you can use this Extend into Wall Core button, so then when you select the wall, it selects the proper location for the core. And remember that core is just separating your stud, so we have a core layer right here and a core layer right here. Okay. So that's your floor. So now let's talk about the items under the floor. What's holding up the building? So I'm going to look at this in 3D, and I'm going to tip my building up for you just a little bit. So what you guys will have are something called stem walls. So you'll have concrete walls under here, and they will be approximately, let's say, like 4 feet for the height of a crawl space. So to create these walls, I'll show you how to do it in just a minute. We're going to use the wall tool, actually. And for the walls, we're going to be using concrete. So you can see you have foundation 8-inch concrete, foundation 10-inch concrete, or foundation 12-inch concrete. If you don't have these created inside your project, you can create a wall type that's similar to this concrete wall, and then just duplicate it. So for the case of my house, I have a 12-inch concrete wall, and I'll show you what that wall type looks like. So it's just a structural layer of concrete cast in place, and then its thickness is a foot. And that proper hatch for concrete cast in place, if we just look at that, it's going to be the surface pattern of sand and then a cut pattern of concrete. Make sure you have the surface pattern and the cut pattern turned on, or it won't read correctly in your section drawings. In order to draw this foundation, we are going to need a level that's called foundation. So if you don't already have a level called foundation, go ahead and create one. To create that level, remember that you go to your elevations and that you'll create a datum line here that's called foundation. And it's measuring from the top of the foundation. So in order to draw these walls, when you go to your foundation plan, you should be able to see the underlay of your first floor. You need to be able to see it in order to place your walls correctly. If you can't see your underlay, go to the properties box and scroll down till you find underlay. You'll see right here it says range base level. You can turn that on to level foundation, and then the range top level will be first floor, and we want to look up. Okay, so now using that first floor as a guide, we can go ahead and we can draw our walls for our foundation. So again, using the wall tool, we're going to go to foundation 12-inch concrete, and I'm just going to use the pick faces, or actually I'm going to use pick lines, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pick the wall. Now when I pick that, I have to make sure that it's drawing my wall in the proper spot. So I'm going to look at it in 3D real quick, and I'm going to flip my house around. And I'm actually going to hide my surface for just 1 second. Okay, so you can see that I didn't draw my foundation correctly because it's hanging on the outside of my house. So I have to go back to my foundation plan. We're going to delete that, and we're going to take a look at what it's set on. So the location line is finish face exterior. Let's try finish face interior, pick lines, and we'll pick the line right here. Now let's go back to 3D and make sure that it's under the building. So it is under the building, but it's still sticking out a little bit. It's not quite right. So let's go back to the foundation level and see where it needs to be. Looks like it needs to be aligned right here and right there on the inside of that wall. Yeah, and now I have it in the right spot. So now I know that on my foundation plan, I need to connect all my walls to the inside face of this wall. So you guys should do the same thing. So let's go now again to wall, and I'm going to actually, I'll keep it on finish face, and I'm going to click on, I'm just going to click around outside of my building, knowing that I'm going to have to move some things. So now I will move this over so it bumps the right spot. And then I'm going to pull this down and extend it past here. And then you see I've got something funky going on here, so I'm going to clean up the corners. And then I'm just going to continually keep placing my walls. Actually, I got it right that time. There we go. Alright, so don't worry if your walls do weird things while you're placing them to begin with, because we're going to go back and we're going to fix them anyway. After, we'll use the join and we'll use the cleanup tool. Okay, so now you see like things aren't connecting and things are shooting out past each other. That's okay, because now I'll click on the walls, and after I exit out of the command, I will just use the trim tool to clean up the walls so they look the way I want them to look and they connect properly. This wall is actually not in the right spot. But you can always do cleanup at the end. Okay, so now once you have all your walls drawn, go ahead and we'll take a look at that in 3D, and everything looks like it's lining up with the face of the wall, so that's good. Now the thing that'll be different between what I just drew and what you guys are going to draw is that when I drew the wall, I have the top constraint at up to level foundation, and I have the base constraint at basement. So if we go back and we look at my elevations, you can see that my basement level is 8'6", and my foundation level is set slightly below my first floor. You only want a crawl space level, so you only need to go to 4 feet and not 8 feet. So a couple things you can do is you can either adjust the level, or you can just change it in the properties box. So you can adjust the level and elevation, and we could say that this is only -4 feet. Okay, mine's not letting me do it, but it's because of the way I have everything set already. You need to set this up in the beginning. So change this, make sure that your crawl space level is -4 feet so that it's set up properly. If it's giving you problems, we can just unconstrain it too. We could say that we could set this to none, unconnected, and then we could just move it to 4 feet and hit apply. Now it moves it down because that's the top constraint that I had. Then I could change my top constraint up to level foundation. I could pull this up, which is then my base offset. So if it gives you problems, there's always ways around it, right? So we can do this again. I just want to show you guys what it's supposed to look like, and then I'll go back to the footing. Okay, so I won't do every wall. Let's just work with what we have here. So we have these walls, and they're set at 4 feet, and these are our stem walls. So they are coming down, and they're going into the earth. In order to stabilize these walls, let me just show you real quick. This is the stem wall. Underneath here, we have to have the footing. So this is what's distributing the load of all the weight that's coming down on this point, and that's distributed through the footing. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add a footing to this. So we're going to go back to that foundation plan that we created, and we're going to use a different tool now to create the footings. So under the structure tab, you'll see foundations, and you see an isolated footing, a wall footing, and then a structural slab. We're going to use this structural wall, and we're going to use a bearing footing to support our wall. So I'm going to use 36 by 12 inches, and then this is really easy. You just pick the walls, and it places it centered underneath all of those stem walls that you drew. So just pick every single one, make sure you don't miss one. And now we're going to look at it in 3D. So those are placed right underneath that stem wall that we created. So that's how you create the floor, the stem walls, and the footings for your building. And now let's take a look at a little section through this so you can just get a better idea of what you're looking at. Okay, so this is a section through my building. Now it looks a little funny, again, because remember I was supposed to have a basement and I changed it so for you guys so you could see. But this is lighting, so ignore that. But here is the floor that we drew. So this is the 10-inch deep floor. You can see the thickness of the joists here, the plywood, and then the finish above it. And then here is my stem wall right here, and then here's my footing right here. And those these items are below the ground. Now the other thing that you're going to have to do with this drawing set is to create a call out. So once you get your footings and your foundation in, you are going to take a section through your building using the section tool, and then you're going to use the call out to do a call out around one of the walls. So remember, all of those are in view, section and call out. I'm going to go to my call out so you can see it right here. What we expect is that you detail this call out. So you can see that I'm using proper construction techniques here. I have my stem wall, and then on top of that I'm going to have my joists, and then on top of that I have a sole plate, then I have my wall with my stud in it, and then I have insulation in here. To add the insulation, this is going to, if I can just select it, this is going to be a detail component that you can add. So if you look on page 7-19 in your textbook, it reviews detailing or creating a detail view.